Story 1. In a terrifying moment, I found myself unable to breathe or speak. Despite my attempts to clear my airway, the obstruction remained. Desperate for help, I mustered the strength to walk towards my boss's office, but my legs began to give out beneath me. Determined to reach him, I pushed through the pain and continued forward. The sound of my head hitting the file cabinet as I collapsed alerted my boss to the situation. I have a vivid memory of floating upwards through a tunnel that stretched horizontally. As I ascended, a high-pitched buzzing sound filled my ears, but strangely, it didn't bother me. Instead, I was overcome with an indescribable feeling of pure bliss and contentment. The intensity of these emotions overwhelmed me, much like the sensation of water enveloping your skin when you dive in. It was as if I was fully immersed in every sensory input, completely present in the moment, with nothing else in the world mattering. As I floated forward, time seemed to lose its meaning, and I felt a sense of calm curiosity. The light ahead beckoned me, and I moved at a leisurely pace, savoring the incredible sensations around me. Turning my head, I glanced back and realized that I had entered this realm through a white tunnel, which now appeared as the beginning of my journey. As I turned my attention forward, I noticed a peculiar sensation on my right side. Although I was curious, I didn't feel any urgency to investigate right away. It was as if I was observing myself from behind, aware that my body was fixated on something. This feeling of detachment from myself in the tunnel was strange, as if I were an observer of another version of me. The true essence of who I am, my being, was experiencing sensations and emotions. It's difficult to put into words, as it may sound bizarre, but I wasn't looking at the collapsed me on the ground. I had no recollection of what had happened before, but I was captivated by what I was witnessing and the incredible emotions I was feeling. Although part of me felt the need to explore further, my primary focus remained on the tunnel and the profound emotions coursing through me. I decided that I would revisit this later. I proceeded to gradually drift towards the radiant light. Time seemed irrelevant, and there was no rush. I had the freedom to move at my own desired pace. As I approached the light, my attention became fixated on it, and my sole objective was to reach the end of the tunnel and embrace the light. However, just as I neared the tunnel's exit, I experienced a sudden pulling sensation and found myself being drawn back into my physical body. After regaining consciousness, I was perplexed to find my boss gripping me tightly and performing the Heimlich maneuver on me repeatedly. Despite his imposing stature, he had successfully lifted me up and administered the life-saving technique 4 times. I found myself unable to stand. The whole situation felt surreal, as if I were still trapped in a dream. I couldn't comprehend how I had ended up at work in such a state. Despite my condition, no one called for an ambulance, assuming I was fine once I had recovered. Grateful for being saved, I repeatedly thanked him. Although deep down I was frustrated to be back in my own body, I hoped that expressing gratitude would eventually make me feel appreciative of the situation. Despite my confusion, I continued to work, only to realize later that I had made numerous mistakes. Feeling overwhelmed, I left work early, and on the long drive home, I reflected on what had happened. It dawned on me that I had actually died. Anger surged within me as I desperately longed to return to the blissful state I had experienced in the tunnel. This story was shared by Robin C. and happened in Story 2. The surgeon and his team were satisfied with how the operation was going. That is why no one expected what happened next. In a sudden moment, my life came to an end. The medical professionals were perplexed and immediately initiated resuscitation efforts, which lasted for a total of 7 minutes. When I left my body, I didn't see it. Instead, I found myself in a place that was devoid of light but filled with love and peace. Even though I couldn't see them, I could sense the presence of beings who accompanied me. It was an incredible experience, and I could feel one of the beings communicating with me in a gentle and loving masculine voice. He informed me that my life on Earth had come to an end and that I had lived it well. Because of this, they were giving me a choice. He asked if I wanted to stay with them or return. In that moment, thoughts of my 3 daughters flooded my mind, and I found myself saying, "I want to return to my daughters. They need me." The being then said, "Very well, we will explain to you how to do it." I felt my energy body, like a liquid, draining back into my physical body and entering through my head. Throughout this process, the beings continued to communicate with me in my mind, showing me how to enter slowly to minimize any pain. After regaining consciousness, the doctors in the room looked at me with surprise. The surgeon, taken aback, was the first to speak and asked if I remembered my own name. Without hesitation, I answered correctly. As I was being moved from the operating room to the ward, my husband approached me. In that moment, I didn't recognize him as my spouse. Instead, I saw him as my brother. However, I was able to recognize my daughters and my mother. The rest of my emotions were a jumble, some of which I cannot recall. The feeling of peace that washed over me was beyond words. However, as the days went by after returning home, that feeling slowly began to fade. I found myself in a state of deep distress, overwhelmed by my emotions and questioning my purpose in life. The weight of these feelings led me to make significant and life-altering decisions. I went through a divorce, relocated, and my daughters accompanied me on this journey. I found myself back at my parents' home, and it was during this time that I discovered Reiki. Embracing this healing practice became a pivotal moment for me, allowing me to find my own path and experience a sense of well-being. Eventually, I became a Reiki master and expanded my knowledge by studying other therapeutic modalities. Through these practices, I learned to connect with and channel the energy of spiritual beings who had welcomed me during a previous near-death experience. I discovered my life's purpose. I was informed that I wouldn't have the option to inhabit another body as time was running out. Instead, I was advised to share my wisdom and knowledge with others and rejuvenate myself through them, all while remaining in the same physical form. It was essentially a new life within the same body. I would consider my previous existence as a past life, and I gained valuable insights from them throughout the years. This story was shared by Alicia M. and happened in 1999. Story 3. During my workout, the most unexpected thing happened. It had been only 30 minutes since I started. My heart stopped functioning properly, causing me to lose consciousness and fall off the bike, resulting in a head injury. Medical professionals immediately responded to the emergency by issuing a code blue. In an instant, I became aware of the sound of joyful laughter coming from two women, and then my vision returned. I found myself floating near the ceiling of a spacious workout room. It was as if I was no longer in my physical body, but rather a mist-like version of myself. Words cannot adequately convey the overwhelming emotions I experienced in that moment. I was filled with an indescribable sense of happiness, peace, and contentment. It was a level of feeling that I didn't know was possible or even existed. As I looked to one side, I was met with a brilliant brightness. Looking down, I saw my physical body lying on the floor, surrounded by a group of about 12 people. I could even make out the colors of their clothing. Being in a hospital setting, there were many medical professionals present. In that moment, I was certain of my death, and I had no desire to return to the life I had left behind. Through a glass window, I caught a glimpse of others going about their work, as if in an office building. The thought of re-entering that body filled me with an overwhelming sense of resistance. It was during this profound experience that I realized the incredible power of our forgiving and loving God. His love extends to all, regardless of their circumstances. As I gazed upon a picture of my husband and daughter, I found solace in the knowledge that they would be all right without me. However, when thoughts of my youngest son entered my mind, I knew that I had to return. Suddenly, it felt as though I was descending into a dark abyss, a tunnel of uncertainty. After regaining consciousness on the floor, I found myself surrounded by people. My immediate instinct was to inquire about the whereabouts of my husband, and to my relief, he was by my side. In a state of overwhelming joy, I repeatedly expressed my happiness throughout the journey to the emergency room and during my time there. The following day, I underwent a pacemaker procedure. The staff at the workout facility were astonished when I returned, as they had believed I would not come back. It was a terrifying experience for both the staff and my husband, who had also prepared for my demise. The event had a profound impact on my life. It made me realize the importance of cherishing every moment and finding joy in the blessings that God has bestowed upon us. It is worth noting that my son Aaron battled childhood cancer and has faced numerous medical challenges throughout his life. I have been by his side, supporting him every step of the way. I believe that I am his guardian angel, providing him with love and guidance. Despite the hardships, he has found happiness in his marriage and children, and I am grateful to be a part of his journey. This story was shared by Linda A. and happened in 2014.